everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Alicia, and today I'm going to be talking about my 2025 reading wrap-up. Last year in January, when I posted my January reading wrap-up, I said I would try to be more active on YouTube by posting videos. That didn't happen. This year I am going to attempt even more to be more active and try to post videos at least monthly with my reading wrap-ups, maybe some tags in there. I'm not really too sure what else. I do have some traveling coming up, so you will probably see some traveling videos. I will also be posting a video soon of my top books of 2025, but let's jump right into my video of my reading wrap-up. So this first thing you see, it is a book bracket, so it's my top books of 2025. And so that's not actually what it is, it's just the top books I read each month. So there are 3 empty spaces in here, or in May, June, and July, and that's because I didn't read anything during those months. And so this is not my top books of 2025, just 6 of these books are in this post. And then the next one is an overview I copied from Pinterest. I tracked how many pages I read in each book, and so you can see that there. The minimum I read in a book was 37, that was the whole book, and then the maximum I read was 497. I'm also really interested in reading different perspectives, so that's authors from another country. So last year I read from 10 different countries, 50 from the United States, 10 from the United Kingdom, 1 from Turkey, 2 from Australia, 4 from Japan, 1 from Cuba, 3 from Ireland, 2 from Scotland, 4 from Canada, and 1 from Denmark. And then 75% of the authors were female, 16% were men, and 8 were co-authored. That could be either man or woman, or same gender, 2 men, 2 women. And then I read 70 books, and then I also read 19,842 pages. If I look on Goodreads, it says something around 20,000, but I actually stop at the very end of the book and see what page I'm on, and then I write it down, and then that's where I get my number of pages from. And then my genre were 79% fiction, 21% nonfiction. Normally, in a normal year of reading for me, which is over 100 books, I try to get my nonfiction around 33%, but I'm happy with the 21% this year. It's not on here, but my average star rating for the year was 3.8, and then if you're interested, you can see all the different genres that I read from. I've clumped some of them together, like mystery, thriller, and then memoir and biography. And then I said I only have 9 Christian books on there. That's not really that realistic. What I actually do is, if it's like Christian historical fiction or Christian romance, I put it in the historical category, or I put it in the romance category. And if there's no category I can really put that the book would fit into, then I put it in the Christian category. And the next picture is just me graphing the books I read each month. I'm happy with it this year. My goal is always 52. If I can get anything above that, that's really great. The most I read was 15 at the end of the year, and then you saw 3 months I read nothing. And then those are the page numbers, so anywhere between 0, but not counting that, I think it's 526 pages per month to 4,054 pages per month. The next thing I have is a 2025 shelf reduction. What this is I keep track of all of the unread books that I physically have, that I currently own. So on January 1st, I had 163 unread books, and I didn't do a very good job of keeping track of it, mainly because I stopped reading halfway through March and then didn't pick it back up until August. But I ended the year with 131 unread books, and my goal for this year is to be below the number 85. And the 85 may seem like a weird number, but September of 2023 was when I stopped actually keeping track of this, And so that's the number that I was at the end of September of 2023. So I'd like to be either at that number or below that number, because that's when I was last actively reading the most, other than when I started back in August of this year. I also just want to talk about some reading challenges that I did. The first one is the Buzzword Cover Challenge. There were some really good ones in here. Some of them are in my top books, but the ones that aren't are Don't Give Up by Kyle Idleman. That one was really good. I highly recommend that one. That one is non-fiction, and it says faith that gives you the confidence to keep believing and the courage to keep going. And then the other one was Holy Disruptor by Amy Duggar King. Amy Duggar is somewhat famous in the world. She grew up as a cousin to the Duggar family, who have 19 kids, and she was kind of just put in the spotlight as cousin Amy, the one who is different, and she wrote about her experience. And it wasn't what I was expecting, and I was really blown away by what she wrote and what she experienced, and it was all just so eye-opening to read. And I just really appreciate the way that she wrote the book. And even if you don't know the Duggars, I think this is a really good book for anybody to read, no matter where you are in life. Then I also did the Buzz Wordathon by Books and Lala. I'm looking at this, and all the books that I would like to talk about are in my top books, I think. I will mention Canary in the Coal Mine. That was a really interesting book. It was nonfiction about the opioid epidemic. The next reading challenge I did was the 2025 Read Your Bookshelf Challenge by Chantel Reads All Day. The first book I want to highlight from there is From the Rising of the Sun. I absolutely loved that book so much. It did not make it in my top books, but it is about two men, Tim Challies and Tim Keese, who go on this journey of wanting to see how different people worship God around the world on their Sunday morning service they worship on. And so that was just really interesting to read about, like, people in Fiji and Africa and then in South America. So that was super interesting. And then I will talk about Wanted later. Sunrise on the Reaping. I'm a big Hunger Games fan, so that was really fun to read. That's about it, I think. The Black Cake was also super interesting as well. The next challenge I did was the Autumn Reading Bingo by Chantel Reads All Day. Some of the books I want to highlight from there is Diary of an Old Soul. That's like some poetry with scriptures woven in, so that was really great. Babette's Feast, that was so incredible. I actually read it in Don't Give Up, that book by Kyle Idleman. He did a summary of the book, and his summary of that book was so good that I wanted to immediately go and read Babette's Feast. So then I did. Five Mere Christians, that one was also really good. It's about the biographies of some famous people, like the maker of Lego, Mr. Rogers. I'll post here or wherever who's all in that one. Spectres in the Glass House and The Lost Boys of Barlow Theater. I absolutely love Jamie Jo Wright. She writes really good Christian mystery. So that was really amazing. And Singing Through Fire is one I will talk about later. And then I also did the 2025 A to Z challenge. So that's just basically if I read a book starting with the letter, it would go in there. The Lion Woman of Tehran almost ended up in my top books. I read it in January. It was so good. And then I can share some other stats with you, just a few. I read 5 books that were translated. And then I read 46 physical books, 2 ebooks, and 22 audiobooks. I also kept track of the pages of audiobooks, but I didn't include my listening hours in there. But my listening hours, I believe, were 68 hours in January, 69 hours in February, 33 and a half in March, and 19 and a half in April. And then my star ratings, like I said earlier, my star rating, or my average star rating, was 3.8. But overall, from the 70 books I read 27 books that I rated 5 stars, 30 books that I rated 4 stars, 12 books that I rated 3 stars, and 1 book that I rated 2 stars. There were 2 books I read this year that were sent to me personally by the authors, either this year or a few years ago, where the author was like, just read it when you can, talk about it, and she was fine with it. And so I just want to talk about those 2 books. The first one is Singing Through Fire by Laura Silverman, and this is a memoir of finding surprising joy in life's darkest trials. Laura is a lawyer, and she ends up with this job of her dreams, and then suddenly, like right when she starts it, she ends up getting sick, and she ends up bedridden for 4 years, and she's actually still struggling with this illness that she's dealing with. All amongst that, we also have Matthew, who is a youth pastor, and he has been diagnosed with terminal cancer. So we have Laura, who's really sick, and Matthew, who has terminal cancer. They eventually fall in love and get married, and it's just this wonderful story of them just following God. Even in the midst of them being sick, they're still listening to his will and doing what he wants them to do, and it's just such an incredible story. I highly recommend that one. The other book I read was Wanted by R.F. Watson. This I really enjoyed, and I personally know this author. It was so good, and I loved it so much. So Wanted is a Christian young adult romance. It weaves together a pro-life message with a fast-paced and exciting story about gangs, forgiveness, the blessings of God, and I just loved it. And I know I just read off of here what it was because I read it a few months ago, and I can't exactly remember everything, but I just remember it was such a good story, and I really enjoyed it. And I even remember talking with a friend about it after, and I'm like, have you read her book? It is so good. I'm gonna wrap up my video here, and if you have any other thoughts, like comments or questions, you can leave them in the comments, and I'll be sure to answer you. And I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.